Intel against AMD, the long-running feud between PC builders, gamers, and content publishers. How do you decide in such a complicated market is the key question nowadays, when Intel has finally given us a type of proper answer to what we've been asking for, and with reaction to Ryzen, since Ryzen was an answer to Intel and Intel really had nothing for a long time to battle it. But now that Intel has something on the table, you have to start assessing costs and benefits, which may be daunting. And it is for this reason that this video exists. If you're undecided about either, maybe we can clear it up for you. Please bear with me. Hello and welcome, this is Shadow Tech Channel. Subscribe and hit the bell icon before we continue. I don't think even staunch AMD fans can refute the overwhelming power of 12th gen Intel CPUs. However, there are certain clear issues, such as platform costs and optimization connected with the implementation of the new design. For those who aren't aware, everything uses a big little architecture similar in basic form to what you'd find in most cell phones today, where some CPU cores are extremely powerful, while others are extremely efficient in an effort to save battery life, which doesn't really matter in the case of desktops because they don't have batteries. So it might be the motherboard, the BIOS battery, the CMOS battery, or something else. And, depending on the processes in use at the time, these P&E cores trade off workloads to optimize power savings while sacrificing as little performance as feasible. See, Intel has been running a little hot recently. Few or Watson may be doing what they say they do on paper. So, again, the E-cores exist to fight this to some level. So you have a strange terminology here. It's no longer merely physical cores, logical cores, or logical processors. You have to specify which cores you're referring to here. So P-cores have hyperthreading whereas IE cores do not, implying that chips like the 127 and 12900 kiloseconds feature somewhat atypical logical processor numbers. I was first suspicious of this architecture, however the larger core count chips appear to perform admirably. I've had nothing but the occasional file explorer hiccup or the entire desktop freezing for a few seconds. I have to go in and restart the Explorer in the task manager and then everything's fine again. That's literally the only hiccup I've had in an entire week of using the 12900K in here, and I'm on Windows 10, not Windows 11. Then there's the other elephant in the room, games, which they absolutely adore. And since most are sub-optimized beyond 12 or so threads, it means that even Core i5 all their chips are performing incredibly compared to 11th gen Intel and even Zen 3 CPUs. However, despite the reasonable costs of older-like chips, and I believe most of us can agree that these prices are fair with the exception of third-party scalpers, their associated motherboards are still very pricey. And the only SKUs accessible until 2022 are ones that are unlocked, which means we only have Z690 chipsets to go with them. As a result, if you wish to embrace an Intel platform early on, you will have no alternative but to spend extra for a higher chipset, higher-end board that you may not need right now. So you have a bit more going for you there, and other than the AMD department, I don't see any other arguments that a Team Blue supporter can make. So, if you're dead bent on adopting the new Intel platform in 2022, which I don't believe is a horrible idea, you simply have to consider the advantages and drawbacks in relation to when you're selecting to adopt. I don't think it hurts to wait a month or two for fresh boards and CPUs to enter the market. This increased diversity will most certainly affect product availability as well, which means we shouldn't see as many third-party sellers flipping chips for several $100s more than retail, especially when it comes to non-K SKUs. We'll even see more F SKUs come out, which are the ones that don't have IGPs. All of these will help to balance out the market. But the big pain in the teeth for me right now is DDR5, which is being treated virtually like graphics cards. Early adoption offers advantages, sure. However, I believe that one apparent consequence is higher pricing due to early manufacturing limits of wholly new techniques. So, while DDR5 is really fast, and the new modules appear tempting, that is the entire point. They want you to buy them by making them appear shiny. If feasible, I feel it is in your best interest to avoid DDR5 motherboards in favor of DDR4 motherboards. They do exist. And, yeah, performance in our own briefings is still excellent. In truth, Intel has said that there is virtually little difference in performance between the two memory generations, particularly in ordinary applications. Let's face it, the speedier and more efficient guys are produced. However, if you're looking for a 12th gen platform right out of the gate, my recommendation is to go with a board that supports DDR4. Remember that you cannot combine DDR4 and DDR5 on the same board, even if everything appears to fit snugly, which it should in principle because the dimensions haven't changed much. The pinouts are completely different. I believe Intel made a smart move by retaining support for DDR4 in its older style architecture. It's probable they anticipated DDR5 shortages from the start since they didn't want it to stymie a launch they thought could stand on its own. And it definitely does in comparison to the competition it'll be facing at greater overall power, utilization, and temperatures, with Intel being the hotter choice, at least in my situation. The 12100K runs hotter than my 5950X, which has more cores. Chip. Keep in mind. As for AMD, you might be thinking, well, this is old news by now. We want the latest and finest, but Team Blue has it. I mean, why would we look elsewhere? That's just fine. That is how many people believe, but is it the smarter decision, from a financial aspect? See, I think it's simple to set aside any concepts of worth in order to receive the objectively greatest product available. But you'll always pay a premium for the greatest stuff out there, and Intel knows their CPUs are the best right now. And their things are priced accordingly. It demands minimal critical thinking and helps you feel happy for a short time until something better is introduced. As is always the case when it comes to technology. To be honest, if it weren't for the fact that most of what I do here necessitates substantial long-term testing, I'd still be on the rise far beyond 2022. The 5950X was fantastic. The 5900X is fantastic, especially at the price. And notice how AMD managed to lower quad-core latencies by boosting core count per CCXs while maintaining a highly adaptable architecture. Just know it feels as fast as the Ring bus and everyday use finally, and utter slaves at video editing due to a penchant for higher core counts. To be honest, I can't think of a single problem with Zen 3, except from the fact that it is no longer objectively the finest all-around workhorse, you know what? That's okay. It's all right. It truly is. Look at what AMD has done in reaction to the debut of Alder Lakes. They've reduced their prices. That's incredible. That is the advantage of having foreign competition. We just didn't have a lot of it until recently. So, even if you're still a hardcore Team Red supporter who only sees red and nothing else, you may appreciate your opponents for spicing things up a bit since it benefits you as well. All we've asked for in terms of price is variety. Those of us in the center, those of us who had previously purchased based on value, had been pushed into red zone for quite some time. And, that was fine. However, with credible competition from the other side, expect more frequent and aggressive price schemes from both sides in the future. It's a win-win situation. So, looking ahead, I believe any option is excellent. To be honest, it all depends on what you're wearing right now. And when you intend to purchase. If you've been using a Ryzen 500 2600 for a few years and want to upgrade to a 5600 or 5800X, chances are you can still use the same board you're currently using with a BIOS update, assuming it's like X4, 7, EB 450 board, a lot of BIOS updates out there that will let you run well at certain processes with them. You won't have to replace RAM, and you won't have to deal with early adoption supply issues, which means pricing will be usually competitive. And, because everything they enjoy is new, it's doubtful we'll see any discounts in the near future. That does not surprise me. It's a brand new product. If you're using an older computer, such as a Quarter 500 2400 or an AMD FX 8350, in that ballpark, if not older, your next platform will most likely be determined by other considerations, such as power draw, sheer performance, and even availability in your nation. You can also do a quick math in your brain to see if everything they're like is 5 or 10% faster on average than Zen 3, which it looks to be in my tests and others. I shouldn't have to pay more than 5% to 10% extra for Team Blue's platform. If you are, I would recommend Zen 3 all day, but if you are not, it may make sense to choose another, especially if you want to use Windows 11. Previously, it seemed to be more future-proof in terms of operating systems. Because the PE cores in Windows 11 are more optimized. But if you're thinking about upgrading to Windows 11, and you're thinking about everything there, like I believe that's a fantastic fit, there are so many things you could and definitely should be contemplating. And I'm really relieved that we can finally have these discussions again. It feels wonderful to talk like way. I'm quite interested to see what more Intel has in store for us in the near future. Around their most recent architecture. But what if it all ends up being a major letdown? I mean, we still have Ryzen, and it's not like Verizon has been particularly bad recently. Please let me know your thoughts on the present state of events in the desktop CPU business. And, yes, I'm looking forward to the discussions in the comments. If all their like is on your radar, please let me know. I'm interested if you've simply been all about AMD, please let me know and explain why. Thank you for watching, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for taking the time to study with me. Share this, and I'll leave it at that.